So then just...
So am I talking all then? I got it. Okay, I'm with you.
Thank you. We'll call our regular meeting for the month of October, the Midway ISD Board, to order. We've got all board members present, so certainly have a quorum. On behalf of the board, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everybody that's with us here in person tonight and to those folks that might be joining us online. If you're here in person and you haven't done something with your phone, I'll leave that up to you as to whether you want to do that or not, but if it goes off, it's on you. Just a reminder, the board's duty, its role, is not to engage in management of the district. Our obligations are to set goals, listen to the reports that are made by the superintendent and staff. We have some of those tonight. Approve budgets, conduct public hearings like we're going to do tonight, set tax rates, approve contracts, which we're also going to do tonight with regard to personnel recommendations, and adopt policy, which we'll also do tonight. As I said, we're not here to manage and run the district. That's done by the superintendent and the staff members. So one of the things we also do to open our meetings now, and Mr. Tullis, in fairness, just found out that now whoever's doing recognition engages us with the mission statement and makes wise and insightful comments to go with it.
I'm at least going to read the mission statement, so I'll get that far at least. But at Midway ISD, we will maximize individual potential within a learner-centered and supportive environment to prepare students to excel in a global society. And I would say, as I pondered this statement, and even when we crafted it a couple years ago, I think about the cohorts that graduated with my sons, the cohorts of students, and even in their mid-20s, some of these former students are in the high levels of government and military and academia and in the entertainment world. I mean, I think if we really tracked the trajectory of a lot of our students, we would be amazed and very thankful that we were able to give them an environment to launch them out into the world. So we want to keep doing that every day.
Words, see, told you. With that, one of the other things that we start our meetings with is a moment of silence. So we're going to take a moment to pause and let you engage in prayer, contemplation, meditation as you choose. Thank you. That said, one of the best parts of our meeting always, Pledge of Allegiance. I saw the folks from the ROTC and they don't look like they're from South Bosque because I'm so used when I see folks in uniform, National Anthem, Pledge of Allegiance, but tonight we've got Sherry Burns and she's going to introduce us to the students from South Bosque Elementary, principal from South Bosque.
Thank you for having us tonight. We have Mr. Colby McIntyre, Mr. Charlie Christian, Mr. Henry Van Hall, and Levi Martin and Hattie Van Hall, and Lila Martin, and I skipped a Van Hall. There's two Van Hall boys. They're all over the place. But these are staff members' children from South Bosque. They're always willing to help, and we're so glad that they're here tonight. You ready, guys?
Great. Excellent.
If you would stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's give these folks a hand. Thank you all for coming out and leading us in the pledge. We appreciate that. We have a item that is a very exciting item. We've done it one time before. We're doing it again tonight, and that's administer oath of office to our how many, Chief? Two? Just one. One new officer to the Midway ISD Police Department. Chief, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Officer Cotto, would you like to join us up front? Go right up there, sir. Board, Officer Cotto is our fifth and final officer for the foreseeable future, hopefully for a very long time. Officer Cotto is going to be out at River Valley Middle School this year. Pardon me. He came to us from Waco Police Department. Decided he wanted a little bit slower pace and enjoy being a police officer, being around kids a little bit more than just the running and gunning of the actions of the big city. Ironically, and his girlfriend that is here with us tonight, when we were deciding who the fifth officer would be, it actually came down to Officer Cotto or Kendall, his girlfriend. And she has since accepted a position at Waco ISD Police Department. They both decided to dive into the world of school-based law enforcement. So, Officer Cotto, you ready, sir? If you would, raise your right hand, please. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I apologize. Repeat after me as I say this, okay? In the name and authority of the state of Texas.
In the name and authority of the state of Texas.
I, Anthony Cotto.
I, Anthony Cotto.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Midway ISD Police Department.
That I will faithfully execute the duties of police officer of the Midway ISD.
Of the state of Texas.
Of the state of Texas.
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve.
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve.
Protect and defend. The Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state.
The Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, sir.
There you go. Welcome to the force officer. We appreciate your service. Our next item is recognition, and for those of you who are here to see it, just bear with us until we're done with it. We'll pause after recognition and give folks that have other things they need to tend to today an opportunity to exit. And Mr. Tullis, as we've indicated, is going to lead us in recognition, but we're going to start with our October recognition days by Dr. Allen.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Russick. A lot of things going on in the month of October. It is National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15 to October 15, so we're wrapping that up on the calendar tonight, but we've been working on it for the entire month. Fentanyl Poisoning Awareness Month. If you've seen the One Pill Can Kill campaigns, that's about fentanyl, so we want to make sure everybody knows about the dangers of that. National Bullying Prevention Month is this month. And then October 2nd is School Custodian Appreciation Day. October 5 is World Teachers Day. October 6th is National Coaches Day. October 8th was Texas Education HR Day. October 14, Indigenous Peoples Day. October 14 through 18, which is this week, National School Lunch Week. Super proud of our school lunch employees. Same week is also Digital Citizenship Week. October 16 is National Bosses Day. And to the board, if you've not had a buntini yet, make sure you get one. We all have a boss. October 20 through 26 is America's Safe Schools Week. And then October 23 through 31 is Red Ribbon Week. In addition to that, October is also National Principals Month. And so I've asked our principals who could to join us this evening. And since this month is National Principals Month, I think it's only fitting that we take a moment to recognize our campus principals. If y'all will please come stand at the front, all the principals. Come stand up here and face that way, please. And while they're coming, I'm going to say some words. Y'all, there's so many things I can say about principals, and I never really know where to start because I could spend a lot of time on this. But I think what I might highlight this evening is the fact that one of the great challenges and privileges of being a principal is that whatever is going on in their campus causes them to have a certain level of reaction, but it causes their staff to as well. And so when great things happen, principals are excited and they point all of that credit to their staff. And when challenging things happen, a staff can get stressed. And so a principal feels not only all of their own personal stress or concern, but they feel all of that of their staffs as well. Don't go anywhere. You're not dismissed, people. I love you. Stand still. It's remarkable the work they do. And I don't know that people can fully appreciate the toll that not only it takes on them, but on their families, and the extraordinary personal sacrifice it requires of each and every one of them. It's a job I'm passionate about, not because I once held that position, but because I know how much we ask of them. They are stuck in the unenvious position of being between us at central office who think we have good ideas and the teachers at the campus level who sometimes think we're crazy. And they are the ones who we expect to negotiate that very difficult set of circumstances so that no matter what's going on, each and every child is having their needs met, and that they're each being put in a position where kids can have their dreams fulfilled. And so, words are cute, tangible expressions are better. And so with this, I'm going to ask Matt and Tiffany Fothery to come to the lectern, and Ashley Futris is going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen next.
Don't be shy. We have a gift for each of our principals, courtesy of the Butcher's Cellar. Thank you to Matt and Tiffany Fothery, owners of the Butcher's Cellar, for your generosity in helping us celebrate our principals and for coming alongside our district as a community partner. They have a gift for each of you. I will have you come forward when I read your name. So if you guys want to bring these over to them when I read their name. Clint Glazman, Castleman Creek Elementary. Kim Hawkins, Chapel Park Elementary. Christy Watley, Hewitt Elementary. Chelsea Lippy, Park Hill Elementary. Sherry Burns, South Bosque Elementary. Mandy Bronstead, Spiegelville Elementary. Cappy Edwards, Spring Valley Elementary. Nicole Gregor, Woodway Elementary. Jay Fisher, Midway Middle School. Jennifer Allison, River Valley Middle School. And Allison Smith, Midway High School. You're welcome. Thank you again for being wonderful partners.
I'll say something really quick. I know I have a familiar face, like I'm not Miss Monksguard. So I know a lot of you know her, that she taught at Midway for a long time, but we just wanted to give back to y'all. And when Dr. Allen came to my husband and I, we just wanted to say thank you. Both of our kids have gone through Midway, and we have one that's a senior now, and then we have nieces and nephews that will be going to Miss Sherry Burns, and one that's there this year. And so we're so thankful because there's so many kids that have so many needs at school, and we feel like the principals make such a difference at each school. And so we are very thankful for y'all, and we're thankful for everything you've done for our kids and the future of our children. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Unless Emily tells you otherwise, I would like to say just one more word of thanks to the Fatherys. We did have a conversation. I said, boy, it'd be nice if we could do something for our principals. And without hesitation, they didn't even blink. The words yes were out of their mouth faster than I can finish the question. You've each got a $100 gift card to the Butcher's Cellar. And so I hope that gives you a night that you can you can't go during lunch. I hope it gives you a night that you can relax a little bit and have a night to unwind, because I know the work that you do is extremely difficult. And y'all, we can't thank you enough. I mean, I say all the time, great schools exist in great communities. How do you put a tangible hand on that? These things, it means a lot to our people. And I tell them I love them all the time, but to know that we have community members who support them in a way that you've just expressed, you can't put words to that. And thank you so much for doing that for our people. Okay.
I think the next item is the regular recognition items. We're going to start with Jess Wheeler. Jess is going to talk to us and introduce our HOSA National Qualifier.
So good evening to each of you. Tonight we get to recognize one of our CTE students who received the top score in the state and is ranked among the top 10 internationally on the HOSA Future Health Professionals Math Exam, which tests competitors on the integration of mathematics and healthcare. Congratulations to Manu Kappa. If you'll please come forward. I'll also ask that the HOSA advisors, Charlotte Bond, Liberty Adair, and Azul Purcell, join him at the front along with their math teacher, Emily Layden, who helped prepare him for the competition. After winning first place at state on the Math Health Professionals exam, Manu advanced to secure 9th place overall at the HOSA International Leadership Conference this summer. Congratulations.
And next up, we have Principal Smith back to introduce us to and talk about our ROTC Naval Honor School.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here tonight in front of the board and to honor our Marine Corps ROTC. The National Marine Corps JROTC headquarters selected Midway High School, our MCJROTC, as one of the 23-24 Naval Honor Schools, placing the program amongst the top 20% of the programs nationwide. And so tonight we have here to present Midway High School. Leaders are Commanding Officer Cadet First Lieutenant Taylor Haddocks, Executive Officer Cadet Second Lieutenant Sam Wong, Company First Sergeant Cadet First Sergeant Lauren Saucedo, and Instructor Lieutenant Colonel USMC Retired Jake Urban. And Mr. Urban, if you'll join them at the front as well, that'd be amazing. Selection is based on several criteria, including superior performance in an annual inspection, unit enrollment, exemplary cadet citizenship, and scholastic achievement. Receiving this designation recognizes the Midway High School program as one of the top MCJROTC programs in a competitive 7-state region. So, congratulations.
And last but not least, we have a friend of Midway that I'm going to let Dr. Allen talk about.
Each year, Midway ISD honors exceptional volunteers as Friends of Midway to recognize their extraordinary dedication and support of Midway schools, students, and staff. To commemorate the award, each recipient is presented with a custom blown glass bowl in red and blue Midway colors created by Midway Middle School art teacher Robert Reinerson. With gratitude, Midway ISD has chosen 4 individuals and organizations as 2024 Friends of Midway. Tonight, we will recognize Becky Cram, and we'll be recognizing the others throughout the course of the year. Ms. Cram, if you'll come to the front, this is when we talk about you while you stand here. Yeah. If you know Becky, you know she has a true servant's heart and can be found volunteering her time for many organizations in Waco. Becky and Lucas Cram have 2 daughters that attend Midway ISD, and she is an officer for the South Bosque PTA and has been a director on the Midway ISD Education Foundation Board since 2022. Last year, Becky brought the district Tango Flight, one of the most innovative capstone projects we've ever had at Midway High School, giving our students the opportunity to build, and they will build a 2-seat FAA-certified airplane, and they'll have an opportunity to ride in it with parent permission, of course. She worked tirelessly with the board to secure community support and funding, and this project has become a reality in large part due to her efforts. Y'all, I think I'd been on the job a week before Futurist and Becky pulled me aside and said, I want to talk to you about this opportunity for our kids to build airplanes. I will tell you that Ms. Cram was nominated for this by Jess Wheeler, and it's only appropriate that he be given just a moment or two to make a comment that he might want to about why he nominated Ms. Cram for this recognition.
Thank you again. The interesting piece about Becky and Lucas is they do have two daughters, but those two daughters attend South Bosque Elementary School, and this project is a Midway High School project. She didn't do this to benefit her children or anything. She did this because she felt it was a good endeavor for Midway ISD students to participate in. And she didn't just bring it. She sat with us at every juncture, with every visit, with every business entity, with every post-secondary entity, made the critical introductions that separate us from other area schools that might be participating in this to create truly a unique opportunity. And it's for that and her dedication that I nominated her for this position, as she is a wonderful person to work with, but she's dedicated to the students of all Midway ISD, and for that, we are thankful.
Thank you, Ms. Grimm.
Thank you to Becky and the Fatheries for their support of this district. It's very, very much appreciated. Congratulations again to our student honorees tonight. The promised pause. This is that opportune time. If you got something else you'd rather go do, it's a public meeting. We'd love to have you, but
I know some of our campus principals have other things you need to attend to this evening. Feel free to
Absolutely.
attend to those obligations as you need to.
So it's because we've got it now. I can explain that. Yeah. Well, I'll mention. Yes. I don't know if we just got our hands on it.
it's fine. Thank you, Mr. Tullis. Outstanding job. On the information items, we got the quarterly investment report, our teacher incentive allotment update. The facilities assessment is at your place. It wasn't in the board packet, but it's at your place. If anybody's got any questions or wants to talk about any of those three items, we'll take that up now. If not, we'll go on to the presentation discussion items, the first of which is our beginning of the year progress monitoring data. Dr. Odejima.
Good evening. Tonight, we have a report for you that we began doing last year to give you sort of a transparent look at performance in our district. Tonight is just the preliminary results, so where we stand at the beginning of the school year and the progress that we'll look to make. You may remember that clicker's not working. Yeah. That's you doing it, not me doing it. Oh, plug this in, please. Thank you.
This is what happens when Miss Wynn's not here. At some point, inevitably.
We got it.
So.
Magic. Okay, now we're ready. So tonight, we're going to talk about the two assessments and just look at some overall information of a few years back data and then also what we've collected to date. So we use two tools to measure progress in the district. And the first is for our reading measurement. So we use the NWEA MAP assessment. And this looks for growth with individual targets set for students. That assessment, we give K through 10th grade for reading comprehension information. It's an adaptive tool. So the goal for that tool is that students would get about half of the questions right. As they begin to get more questions correct, they give them more difficult questions. And when they begin to miss questions, it gives them easier questions until we can find the level at which those students actually achieve cognitively with the content that they understand. Tango Lion is a little different kind of measure that we use for math. This is also an adaptive test that they take online on their iPads. We use this test also kindergarten through Algebra 1, although we've altered the Algebra 1 test to be a little more specific for the needs that we needed to assess in Algebra 1 this year. So this assessment is also web-based. This is a little different look. Rather than measuring our student performance against a national norm, this one just measures us at our knowledge level of the Texas standards that a student would have been taught at that time. So to look at our assessments, to give you just point of reference here, you have the national norm on the far left, and then you have the previous 2 school years in the darker blue and the red color, and then we've got the BOY for this year in that aqua color, just for the beginning of year results. So you'll see, and you'll see this as a trend throughout the rest of these slides, generally, we perform above the national norm, but there are some places where we achieve about the same that we did the year before, and then there are some places where we're a little higher, a little lower. You may not have seen the end of year results, so the spring results for last year, because we reported STAR assessment results rather than this. But you can see where we land and how well we're making progress. So again, that was kindergarten. This is first grade, same kinds of trends. We perform above the national norm, hanging out about where we have traditionally. You'll see a couple years tick up just a little bit on that BOY, and a couple are a little bit lower, which means we have more work to do in some of our specific areas. This one in particular was a grade level that we're watching because they didn't perform as we anticipated they might on the state assessment as 7th graders. So as 8th graders, we know we have some ground to make up for possible previous skills as well as this year's skills. So that's a targeted area. So overall, you see the same kinds of trends, above normed or national norm standards, and then we sort of are competing with ourselves. What we want to see this year is with the new practices that we've put in place, particularly in this reading area, with the new cognitive programming that we've pulled in and the new comprehension programming we've pulled in, we want to see a greater spread by the end of the year between the national norm and the Midway numbers. So that's our goal. This is 10th grade, and then moving on to math, you have a little different setup on math. So since we're not measuring against a national norm, but rather against the TEKs that have been taught at that time, you'll see kind of a strange flip here. Our kindergarten and first grade numbers, we have a greater number of students who show to be on track in the very beginning because they don't necessarily have previous skills that we would assess for. We're talking about the current skills that they've been introduced to. So you'll see on track and off track. So we look like we do really well on that kindergarten, first grade area. And then as we move into 2nd grade, you see that we have skills that we need to learn. So you see this flip, and it's the same kind of flip every year with the students that are on track and then the students that have more information that they need to gain, more knowledge they need to gain as we go. So we're not terribly far off from where we've been in the past with some of those numbers. This year's scores for BOY, as far as the students that are on track, is sort of in between the previous 2 years, so that's an expected outcome. You see similar things we're hoping to gain as we go. Again, this is just the beginning of year snapshot, so what we'll be telling is what we look like at the middle of year and then end of year progress. So again, some of these grade levels, we know underperformed where we expected them to perform last year, and so we're watching those grade levels very carefully. This is a comparison, just as a reminder, of the areas where we did excel last year and where we had some challenges, and we see that data repeated in the performance scores with our screeners as well. So as far as next steps for us, we continue to disaggregate the student data. What you're seeing tonight is all 600 plus children that are in that grade level, and when they're all grouped together, how they perform. But we do look more specifically at individual campus performance. We look at individual classroom performance, and then drill down to specific student populations that we're tracking because maybe they were an underperforming student population in previous years. So we're tracking that very closely all the way down to the individual student so that we know what interventions to provide. So we're looking for those gaps in learning, and then we're also predicting to see a further distance from the national norm in our performance by the end of the school year. So these are slides that you've seen previously about the information or about the programming changes and initiatives that are going on to support student growth. And we'll continue to work through those processes and track our screeners. With this beginning of year, we'll have a middle of year assessment that happens January, February, and then we'll have an end of year measure for that as well. Are there any questions about that information?
I was just about to ask you how often we were testing and we're comparing them, and you just said.
That's right.
Mid-year and because I was wondering how hard that was for the teachers. That's a lot to ask for the teachers.
It is.
Checking those numbers, monthly. But
That's right. There's always a balance with the time you take to assess what we know and the time you spend teaching. So it's one of those things. We don't want to do it too often, but we do want to know when we're on track and when we need to make some changes.
Are there some typical things that you find with some of those students as why they're underperforming, or they're, what are your interventions look like?
Yeah.
For that?
So I would say yes. Many of the things that we see and that we diagnose, we have interventions that work for those students. It's a matter of getting the interventions to the students when they need it. We have at our elementary schools, they have a specialized time within the day. So the intervention may happen in the classroom because the teachers pull small groups at tables and work with them based on the needs that they have at the time with the skills that they're working on. But we also have an embedded time for intervention in the school day called WIN time. So it's what I need time. And they group students based on needs and then work specifically with, resources that the district provides for them to use that we know are research-based best practice approaches to specific needs. The key with all of this is it helps us, because it's a screener, it helps us diagnose where the deficits are. And so we feel like we have the right tools. We feel like we have the right personnel to deliver that information. It's just a matter of making that match with the student. So we're getting the right information to the right kid when they have those deficits.
So are there some root causes to those deficits that we could get ahead of?
Right. Great question. We know that early childhood education is critical. And the earlier we start with the younger students, the better off we are. We know that now we're also still making up for some lost time in our pandemic COVID days, where some very fundamental things were not able to be provided at really critical developmental windows. So we feel like we're making up for some of that. Some of it too, I think we've seen and you heard us talk about before, it's not only academics or sometimes getting in the way of academics are behavioral concerns, like just how to be a student in a classroom, are working on attention spans and working on engagement, working on positive reinforcement so that we have the opportunity to actually access the academic information. And so we're working through all of those pieces. I think we've seen a change. Midway, not as much as other places, but we've seen academic deficits because of environmental changes that maybe began with COVID. We're just a different society than we were at one time. And so I think we're adapting at every turn to that. But I don't know how much of that answers the questions that you have, but we're
Well, I think, is there anything we can do as a board to help in that? And I hear some of that, early childhood
right.
funding. Could you go get us some funding for that?
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
We'll
We'll
work
talk
on
about
that.
that later, in fact. Can I chime in here real quick?
Absolutely.
I think another one of the things, and Dr. Odejima and I have talked about this quite a bit, like just almost casually, but you see this more in the map data than you do the Tango. And I'm answering your question, I'm just taking a long way around. is this need to continue to push kids into deeper levels of thinking. It is one of the hardest things for students to really be good at because of the grit required to challenge yourself to think deeper. It's easy to spit out facts. It takes real effort to think. To really think about something deeply takes a little more effort. And it's one of the harder things to teach. How do you challenge a child in a way that inspires them to want to think deeply about something? And so when we talk about support from the board, obviously there's a number of things we could talk about. Some of those we have in other meetings and other times about just our strategies and putting the highest qualified teachers in every classroom. But also just to understand the tension that creates for classroom teachers, the work associated with and the challenge associated with trying to be a really good teacher at doing something that's very, very hard. We're constantly trying to inspire and encourage them to do the best they can with this, while also recognizing that it's very, very challenging and sometimes they need to just let a little pressure out, right? And so I think one of the best things the board can do for us is understand that tension exists, and that while we're challenging our teachers to challenge our kids, that does not come without some level of consternation. And so we're always trying to keep our finger on the pulse of that. Thank you.
Hey, so just so we understand the data, can I ask a question about, I'm looking at the Tango Lion stuff.
Sure.
The definition, you can just pick any of the years if you want, but the definition of above level, at level, bubble, and below level is constant throughout the year, or is that a measure that where we would expect kids to be beginning versus middle versus end, right? So
That's right, because you've covered more content by the
Right.
time you get to the middle of the year. So
we-
that's like a moving target,
So
basically.
we wouldn't necessarily, I mean, it's not necessarily a problem to see about a third of the kids on track and 2/3 off track for beginning of year, because we haven't really taught them those things yet, right?
That's right.
So really the money pays off at the end of the year.
That's right. We'll be tracking through the end of the year to
and so
to
since-
see the whole piece of this. Yeah.
So since we don't see that beginning of year, middle of year, end of year trend like we did for the NMAP one, do we feel good about how our progress has been last year during the year? I mean, obviously we saw the STAR results, but
Right.
do we feel good about, BOI, MOI, EOI?
Yeah,
for
so
math across the grades?
we know that in math, our 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 7th grades were lower performing than what we would have wanted. So those are the areas that we're tracking. And I think when you look at this data now, we're not looking at 3, 5, 6, 7. We're looking at the grade level after that to see, are those kids tracking now? If they were lower performing in 3rd grade, what do they look like as 4th graders? And then what ground do we need to make up?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's easy to look at this and say, oh, no, this is a problem, but I think recognizing it's beginning of the year and that the end of the year will really be the tail of the tape for how did we do.
That's right.
And especially things like Leader and Me and other things, what impact did that have as we went along? So,
And
That's right.
you raise an interesting point in that if it's content we haven't taught yet, and we have a third of the kids who are on track, sort of to the question that's being asked earlier, like how often do we test? It does take classroom time to provide these tests, and that can be a challenge, but it is also the most just form of education because it gives us an opportunity to take that third of children who are already ahead, and instead of making them sit through something that they have already know how to do, we can identify them and begin to push them. Our mission statement talks about maximizing the potential of every child, not just the kids who are behind. And so by being able to identify those children and make sure that we're pushing every child to achieve their fullest potential, that's part of what this data does, right? There's pain in not knowing, and so we're trying to know so we can avoid some of that loss.
yeah, and to your point earlier about teaching them to think and measuring that, I mean, we had a little bit of conversation at TASB about achievement test versus ability test being kind of a different thing, and these are both very achievement oriented, right? Or is the reading one more of an ability test? I mean,
Ability like a cognitive test?
yeah, like cognitive versus
Yes, the
versus
reading
do you
is
know these
closer to
keys yet
that.
or not,
That's right.
Right.
That's
So
right.
It's a different kind of thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Becky, would you say this new approach we've had the last year at least, to try to help each student be identified where they are and what they need to do and how to keep them growing, has all been enhanced because of our technology and our iPads and the things that we can now do
Right.
with all this we brought into the schools to individualize each learning program for each child so they can be the
That's
best
right.
they can be, that we couldn't have done this without
That's right.
them using the iPads and the technology we have.
Yeah, this actually has progress monitoring data that goes along with it so that you can see the even more smaller interval pacing for students and whether or not they're making progress.
Because I also think it helps them not be stuck out in the classroom, right? If someone's below everyone else.
That's right.
They're working on their own iPad perhaps and not realizing their paper's different than the student next to them that may be ahead of them. Because that was one of my concerns when you have a classroom at such different levels. You don't want the children to feel ostracized or they're not smart enough or they're different.
That's right.
And so I think that helps
Yeah.
a lot too, that we have the iPads and that technology.
It has the same look for every student, but it's individualized in the content, yeah.
Right, okay, good.
I like the way you put that, but the word that's coming to mind through across this discussion is customizable. And
Yeah.
very honors the complexity of the classroom and the students' needs in a highly nuanced kind of way. In a way that we are in touch with what's going on in a deep dive kind of way as well.
Yeah,
And it
absolutely.
is so important to get the kids that are ahead of everybody, because I had a child like that just basically read every day when she got through with the work. You know, we're talking years ago, but they just
Right.
wasn't anything else really for her to do, and the teachers were working on what they were working on with the class. So this is a whole lot better.
That's right. Because the beauty of content like this is that when the teacher sees it on their side, it's not just bar graphs of how many students are in those categories. It's the names of the students that are in those categories. So it's a very prescriptive type piece of data that they have at their fingertips so that they can know who needs what intervention at what time and at what intensity.
Well, I hope they know we support them 100% in this endeavor to teach this way and try to help each kid excel. I think
Absolutely. It's a
great
big
that
job. We're
doing
very
this.
lucky. We have great teachers.
Yeah, so, thank you.
So Becky, I'm curious in timing of the end of the year administration of these versus the STAR assessment.
Yeah. Is Kim Johnson here?
She is.
Kim Johnson. STAR for elementary, and then the screeners. Is STAR prior to end of year screener?
Yes, we take STAR before the ELA,
Mhm.
because it's a whole lot of testing. Now that STAR's so early in April, we try to spread out the kids. Only avoid testing this week, but
It is a lot, yeah.
So in some regards, we get a really better read on where our students are because this is given closer to the end of the year where STAR, it is when it is.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
I like the way you put that, it is what it is. Hey, so my question is, have we gotten this information in the hands of the parents for their kids so they'll know kind of where they are and with some explanation, or is that still part of our plan for beginning of year, middle of year? end
Yes,
of
but I
year?
don't know timeline on that. Kim, do you have it?
yes, we have just wrapped up all the screeners, and I know secondary is getting it printed and ready to send out to family that we need to do the first round of report cards. So it's just a little different to do with this.
All right, other comments, question, discussion?
We tried to stump Becky, but I think she's unstumpable.
She knows this.
Well
Oh,
done.
man,
Well
that's a
done.
terrible game. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Monthly finance report, Mr. Brooks.
All right, good evening, members of the board. On page 35 of your packet, you'll see the financial report for the month of September. Not a lot of new information to report on this month. You'll notice on page 39 of the report, an enrollment report is shown that compares this year's enrollment data to last year's snapshot. Although we don't have snapshot data available yet for this year, give us a good idea of kind of where we stand by campus and grade level. Next month, we'll resume the monthly enrollment reports, so we have more longer period of data to identify trends. We'll also have our first 6 weeks of ADA information to begin looking at that and see kind of where we stand for the year in terms of our ADA and WADA and state funding. Additionally, next month, a representative from Patilla Brown Hill, our audit firm, will be here to report on our 23-24 financial report. So any questions in the financial report?
Questions from the board, discussion? Not a question for Wesley, but just relatedly, I was talking with Susan before the meeting, and for those of you who've not had a chance to do it, there's a extensive, and it's certainly dealing with a lot of things beyond school-related matters, that's why it's extensive, question and answer that the Waco Trib had with Pat Curry, who is the Republican candidate for our House seat. And if you haven't read it, I would encourage you to read it, because particularly the school part, Mr. Curry thinks that schools get $16,700 per student.
It
He's
had to
not
be a
the only
typo.
one. That's what's being presented.
Well, that's the
often.
Texas Public Policy Foundation talking point.
Yeah.
Y'all do the math, multiply even 8,000, which is a little light for us, by 16,700, and see how that compares to our actual budget numbers. So just a editorial comment.
I would
trade.
venture to say he knows what the actual basic allotment is, because I would probably mention it to him about a dozen times. I try to hammer it in every chance I get.
Yeah. So, thank you, Wesley. But don't go anywhere. We have a report and then a public hearing on our financial integrity rating system, our first. So I'm going to let Wesley, you go ahead and make the report part, and then we'll have our public hearing.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Russick. On page 42, you'll see our first report, Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. This is the 22nd year of the school's first report, developed in 1999. The 2024 report is based on fiscal year 22-23 data. The primary goal of FIRST is to achieve quality performance in the management of school districts' financial resources. It's based on staff, student, and budget data submitted through PEAMS and the annual financial audit report. On page 43, you'll see the 20 indicators listed there and how the district scored in all of those for 2024. The superior rating is achieved for a score of 90 to 100. The district received a score of 96 for fiscal year 22-23. So it received a superior rating as we had the last several years. There were a couple of the items that we received 8 points instead of 10. Number 8 and indicator 8 and 11. 8 is the current assets to current liabilities, and 11 is long-term liabilities to total assets. And we just missed getting 10 points just by a few points on those. So any questions on the first report?
Well done.
If I might, I would like to draw your attention to number 13. Was the district's administrative cost ratio equal to or less than the threshold ratio? And that ratio is defined by the state. And if you'll notice, we went from 8 to 10 points on that rating this year. And that should give the board confidence that when we are talking about staffing and staffing design and whether or not we are putting resources into classrooms and into the instructional side of the district compared to the administrative side of the district, that the team has done a lot of work around making sure we put resources on the instructional side. So we've actually dropped that administrative cost ratio, which demonstrates that more of what we're doing with our resources is poured in the direction of the classroom than it is into administrative cost. And it's not uncommon for those who don't know to assume that there's a lot of money that's being sunk into administrative costs. And I like to talk about those high-paid administrators. If you look at the agency's own measure, we're getting as many points out of that particular question as we possibly can. So we've worked pretty hard to make sure that we're pointing things in that direction.
Relatedly, since you brought it up, Dr. Allen, Mr. Curry's answer to one of the questions, in part attributed in times from the past, there were only 2 administrators for every teacher, and now we were at a point where we had 4 administrators for every teacher. 4 administrators for every teacher.
That'd be really crowded.
Yeah. I don't think we'd get 10 points if we had that.
I think we have Dr. Allen do a sit-down Q&A with the trip over.
It would be dramatically different.
School finance.
How many employees would we have if we had 4 administrators for every teacher, Wesley?
How many teachers?
600, yeah. We'd have 2,400.
I mean, that's just a ludicrous.
I mean, I've got a handful of principals sitting in the back. I bet you guys would love nothing more than 4 administrators
For every teacher.
Allison thinks it's a groovy idea. Well, and we're having a little fun, but what's really interesting is when you look at non-educational for-profit institutions. For years and years and years, Southwest Airlines was held up as one of the for-profit institutions that more companies should try and be like, and their manager to their supervisor to subordinate ratio was 1 to 10. What I wouldn't give. Like, that'd be great. We unfortunately have not been able to find the luxury of being able to squander the money for-profit does to this point. Tongue in cheek, of course.
Yeah, Pete, I know it's not on the agenda, but at some point, we do need to talk about what's going to be our response publicly to
That's part of why I brought it up,
Yeah.
because, you know, I literally was reading that article last night, and my wife had the unfortunate experience of sitting next to me as I was reading it. And
Which
she
is
goes,
most
so,
nights.
yeah. Well, but most nights I don't talk about things like that.
Okay,
right?
all right.
And she said, okay, that's all great, and I hear you disagree with his statements. What are you going to do about it? And that's part of the reason I brought it up here, because I think it's something that we should do something about.
Mr. Charles, it's kind of on the agenda. We will, under superintendent's comments later in the agenda, we have an item specifically called out around legislative priorities. And so we'll at least develop some talking points that may frame out a little bit about what that looks like moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to that point.
We'll get there.
I'll
We'll
save
get
my
there.
thoughts. I'll save my thoughts.
All right.
We do need to-
Any questions for Wesley on our first report?
I had a question on, I noticed on number 9, the measurement changed ostensibly because the expenditures exceeded revenues because it went to days cash on hand. What was the delta between the expenses and revenues that caused us to have to do the alternate measure?
To go to days cash on hand, that's a good question. For 22, 23, I don't remember off the top of my head how we finished, but we may have finished at a slight deficit, and so that's why we switched to days on hand. But I can look that up.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected it to be a lot because I saw that it was pretty thin in 21, 22. But it's just something I saw.
We'll get you an answer, Mr. Green.
All right, so public hearing, it's always interesting. We are posted up for a public meeting, and the quandary is, well, what do you do with the public meeting while you have a public hearing? So for lack of a better term, we'll pause the meeting momentarily. We will open the public hearing and welcome anybody from the public who wishes to address the board regarding our first report to come forward and do so. Mia, you sure? Okay, just checking.
Calling
All right,
my niece
not
out
hearing-
by name? Wow.
Well, you introduced me to her before the meeting.
She's our only public here.
Now you
Makes
made the
fair
minutes.
game.
Congratulations.
Public here.
Not hearing from the public, we will close the public hearing, and we don't have to take any other action on this. So we will move on to our consideration items, first of which is the consent agenda. We got our minutes from our regular and special called meetings, 2 new clubs, our new real estate fundamentals course at the high school, some early graduation requests, a couple of local policy changes, and with that, does any board member wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? If not, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Watts, second by Mr. Alford. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Approve agreement for purchase of attendance credits. We still do that.
The hits just keep on coming.
They
You
just keep
know,
on coming.
It's no longer called recapture, we're called revenue contributing. So anyway.
Oh, that's so friendly.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Brooks talk about that. I started talking, but he's really the appropriate person to talk about.
Yes, sir. It's just a requirement. So we are a Chapter 49 district, even though we're not paying recapture. It's a possibility. So we're a Tier 2 recapture if we had copper pennies. And you never know, like our water could drop during the year, and we could start having to pay Tier 1. But this is just a requirement as part of that, just to show how we would go about paying the recapture that we would possibly be entitled to.
All right, there in your board packet, folks, on page 102 is the recommended language. So if somebody wants to make a motion using that language, that would be great.
On 102?
Isn't it 102?
Yeah, page 102 in the packet.
Yes, in the
No,
packet.
Where?
I guess it's it pops up 103 on the bottom of the
103.
number, but on my screen it
But
says
still, I don't see the
102.
motion.
102, and there's the language right there. Ms.
Oh, that whole administration recommendation?
Yes, ma'am.
04, that
Yes,
start
ma'am.
with that. Okay, I'll make a motion. Okay, I move that for the 2024-25 school year, we delegate contractual authority to obligate the school district under Texas Education Code, TEC 11.1511C4, to the superintendent, solely for the purpose of obligating the district under TEC 48.257 and TEC Chapter 49, subchapters A and D, and the rules adopted by the Commissioner of Education as authorized under TEC 49.006. This includes approval of the agreement for the purchase of attendance credit.
Thank you, Ms. Vick. Motion by Ms. Vick, is there a second?
Second, as long as I don't have to read it all out.
I do not have to read it all out. Second by Mr. Witt, any discussion or questions?
I'm going to use a British accent next time.
Yep. French accent. You were just in France.
Oh, French. I should have been French. Oui, oui, let's do
That
it.
would have been appropriate.
Bonsoir.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Oui.
Aye.
Hi.
Yeah, okay. Any opposed? But you have to do it in French if
French.
you're
I
opposed.
know.
All right, that motion carries unanimously. Personnel, we need to act on.
There's actually not, you have corrected the agenda that you received. There were
Do
no
I?
actual contracts issued on these late hires, and so there's nothing to approve.
Yay. Okay.
I actually, I didn't have one, but I do now, so, okay.
Sorry, there was correction on the
No problem. Closed session?
No, sir.
No closed session. Legislative priorities and
Hey, here we go.
other comments from the superintendent.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with legislative priorities. And I'll tell you what the intent was, and we'll see where it goes. So what you have in front of you is a draft of legislative priorities that has been put together and spearheaded out of Emily Park's office. And it has been kind of an effort of all of the executive team to pull some information together, and has been compiled in a way that tries to capture some of the big issues. I will tell you, most of what you see in front of you has pulled significant topics in which we've seen overlap from TASB's priorities, TASC's priorities, Fast Growth Schools coalitions, and other individuals with whom we're affiliated, plus things that we know affect our school district in particular. And we've tried to pull all that together. And so I know y'all are 100% capable of reading. I'm going to step through some of these fairly quickly. And what the intent was for the board to have a chance to look at these and really have some time to digest them, and then provide me with feedback. And then we would fold that into another version that you might see in November, with the thought being that we'd have a fully developed set of legislative priorities that's had ample opportunity for thought, and not just on the numbers, y'all, but like how you even, your opinion even on how we're crafting the message. I can tell you what's in front of you is going to migrate even from what you see based on some conversations we had as late as today. And so, like I said, I'm going to step through these, but the hope is that you would study these and then give us some feedback. We can take that tonight, but we also wanted the board to have time to like look at it and be able to really think through it if there was more time that was wanted, and we'd bring you some updated language the next time we get together. So, fully fund Texas Public Schools, we have adopted the phrasing fully fund. That tends to be terminology that's being used by a number of groups. Part of what that tries to capture is two things. And one is the fact that there's not been an adjustment to the basic allotment in the last 6 years. If you go back to the year 2006, The state's never gone more than 4 years without an adjustment to the basic allotment, and we are now in year 6. If you adjusted the basic allotment for inflation to bring us to the buying power that we had in 2019, it'd be about $7,100 in change, and we're still at $6,160, despite whatever math it is that you're hearing from other people who seem to act as though they're informed on this issue. So we want it fully funded. In addition to that, we would like for all the unfunded mandates that have been passed down during that same period of time to be fully funded, up to and including aspects that include items such as newly implemented curriculum, safety. Safety has cost us a lot of money, and other associated mandates for which we've not received funding. And so we believe that public education needs to be fully funded if we're expected to do the job that is being put in front of us. Support teacher recruitment and retention. Clearly that has something to do with money, but we also think it has to do with increasing the size of the candidate pool. So we need more money for teachers so that they can be paid a wage that keeps pace with inflation. But we also would encourage our state leaders to think differently about the surcharge for hiring retired teachers so that we can increase the size of the candidate pool. We'd like for them to think differently about the way that they invest in teacher support programs and teacher support personnel within school districts. We also think that our state needs to think differently about the way that they require teachers to be certified. They've made that more complicated, not less, over the years. And so what that does is it really narrows down people who are certified to teach within certain positions. We applaud the DOI effort. However, we have seen an increase in the number of teachers we're hiring under District of Innovation. It does allow us to put individuals in classrooms. But y'all, I was talking to somebody today, and there's one piece of research that you can point to that almost everyone agrees leads to student achievement. And it doesn't matter who's doing the research, the left side of the aisle or the right, what they would all agree to is that the greatest predictor of whether or not a child's going to learn in school factors, not out of school factors, in school factors, is the quality of the teacher. Great teachers lead to student success, period, end of sentence. And so we need our state to help us figure out how to deepen the pool of great teachers and then keep the ones that we have in the profession. I've even talked just offhandedly about them putting a program in place that would provide incentives for certified teachers who are not working in education to come back to the profession. Yes. Like a state program that would give people $10,000, $15,000 who are sitting at home with a certificate to come back, a one-time only gig, something like that. They need to think creatively. They're very creative when it comes to conjuring numbers to justify stances they want on other things. I think they could get creative about putting real numbers to deepening the size of the teacher pool. We obviously oppose school vouchers because it takes money away from funding public schools, and because other places that it's been tried, what it basically does is crush the state funding. And so we know that that is really not a good deal over time. If you look on the back of the piece of paper we've given you, it helps highlight the overwhelming need that we're experiencing in Midway in particular. I want to remind you that the numbers that you're looking at on the top part of that page cover the last 5 years, and that we've not received an increase to the basic allotment in the last 6. In the last 5 years, we've seen a 210% increase in the cost of security services. We've seen a 49% increase in the cost of fuel, a 206% increase in property and casualty insurance, and a 50% increase in what the district is contributing to health insurance. And right in the middle of that page, you would see that we have been underfunded in special education over that same 5-year period to the tune of almost $5.7 million. If the state does nothing else in the next session, they need to figure out what it means to take care of our students who need us the most. And then we have some other data points at the bottom that you might want to look at. And so it's one thing to advocate for what it is that we think our schools need if we're going to be able to meet the challenge that lies in front of us. But there are those who don't understand the challenges that are in front of us. Security services are something that we need for schools because of the lack of lawmakers to take other type of legislation to keep our schools safe. So we have to have that. Fuel, property casualty, health, we didn't even put energy cost on here, and we very well could have. And so when people want to talk about where all the money is going, I can tell you where it's going. Here's several big buckets right here, and it has nothing to do with the salaries being paid to teachers or the salaries being paid to administrators. This is just operational cost, and we're getting hammered. And I know I don't have to explain this to you because you're fully informed board members, but you're seeing the same thing in your home. You're paying more for gasoline, and you're paying more for insurance, and you're paying more for the things that you have to have just to keep your homes going. So are we. The difference is we haven't seen an increase to the basic allotment in 6 years. And it's crippling. And we do a great job of standing up under the weight of it because we have incredible staff and fantastic principals and a community that supports us. But the challenge is significant. And so I was hoping that you would take a look at this set of legislative priorities and then give us your feedback either this evening or over time. But fully, what I kind of expected was for y'all to take some time to look at this and give this to us over the next several weeks. But if anybody has any comments they'd like to make tonight, we'd be glad to receive those.
You guys are looking at me. You hear the term fully fund, and it's too ambiguous. And I know on the back you do some good. You got some good data. Man, it'd be great to. I mean, if we can say exactly what we mean when we say fully fund, and what I hear you saying is basic allotment. It needs to go from where it is now to at least X. And
Yes,
I would spell that out. Make it easy for
Yes,
people
sir.
to understand.
And we have those numbers.
Behind, and the other thing I would say is something in here that we would love to index that to something going forward so that we don't have to keep coming hat in hand to the well
That's a good
every
word.
2 years on this. I mean, let's put something in place that says we're going to index it at least to CPI or to something, right? Obviously, every 2 years they can change it if they want to, but if we go ahead and get that in place now, maybe we can sort of establish a precedent.
In fact, at one point, it was indexed.
Yeah, I
They
know.
quit doing it.
Well, let's push back.
I agree, but my point is, it's
Yeah.
not like they haven't done it before.
Yeah.
They quit. They quit doing it about the same time they started putting a lot of pressure on other.
If we don't ask for it
objectives.
here, we won't get it.
Yes,
We may
sir.
not get it anyway, but we may as well ask for it.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know if this needs to go under legislative priorities. However, it occurs to me, based on things we've read and have been hearing for some time, our legislature does not seem to have a clear authoritative understanding of school finance. In particular, something I heard just today, I don't know what the hard number is, but it's well over 50% of Texas school districts are running a deficit budget. And I believe some of those are recapture districts. I mean, it doesn't matter how much money you're taking in, everybody's well is emptying out fast. And that recaptured money is staying in the state coffers. It is not coming back to the school districts for which it was intended. And that math to me just seems appallingly unjust. And that number is not being acknowledged. And I don't know where they're getting this $16,000 a year, $14,000 a year. The number that our representatives and senators are seeing is what each child is getting is fictional. I would, can we better educate our representatives and senators on school math?
Well, and I'd also add to that what would be good to include in this, to that point, is to have a number as to, because people are going to see this and say, this is all great, you want to fully fund stuff, but, you know, Texas doesn't have the money to pay for all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to say. But I think we need to make dadgum sure that people know that there's tens of billions of dollars
Yeah.
sitting there that should be going to public schools that's not.
So to that point, there were $4 billion allocated to public education in the last session that were never allocated. That's $4 billion that's just sitting somewhere. And then the comptroller's already communicated at least a $20 billion surplus this go around. That's not all for pub ed, but they're sitting on at least $20 billion more dollars than they
That
projected.
money cannot be held hostage to our state leadership's agenda. I mean, to me, that's also criminal and unjust.
So
In my
what
opinion.
We have to
have,
spend the taxpayers' money.
So through the chamber, I help co-chair the public policy committee.
Yes, sir.
We do take up educational priorities as part of that, both state and federal. You know, vouchers is kind of one we have to step away from a chamber of commerce, but the first two absolutely, you know, are going to be strong in that. What other you know, community groups, what other consortiums, what are we doing with our other school districts in McLennan County? I mean, they've all got the same problem.
Yes.
And so what kind of co-messaging opportunities do we have?
So one of the things that I've been working on is, for example, the Leadership Waco Forum is going to set up some priorities. So I'm working with their leadership to ask whether or not they typically get involved in the education space on that, and I want to work with them on that. again, I know you work with the Waco Chamber. I actually had a meeting with Matt Metters recently about some hopes that I had for their level of involvement, like even in things that they can't directly do, if they can at least publicly endorse our work, that kind of thing. We work with the Hewitt Chamber very closely, and so trying to work with these other organizations with which we are connected. And then there's some effort to coordinate with Region 12 on some big topics, the Region 12 Service Center, to create a little bit of synergy.
Because the other thing, there's a message behind the message that's happening here, unfortunately, from our state leaders, which is basically saying that public schools as a whole are not good enough. And so there's, I think about what could we be doing in McLennan County, because when vouchers come, more and more students are going to think their public schools aren't serving them well and go other places, or we're seeing a lot of families homeschooling now too.
Yes.
And some of that may be because of the negative messaging that is being reinforced every day in the media and through those state leaders. So is there an effort we can sow into, maybe with the other school districts in McLennan County, to have a positive public education message going on out there, combating some of these negative messages? I mean, we're kind of, we typically just sit back and take it because we're public ed,
Right.
but I'm all for fighting back.
I'm glad you brought that up, Rick, because just today I went to the local, there's a local lunch for the Pastors for Texas Children. And coming up November the 13th, there's a training in partnership with Friends of Texas Public Schools, which y'all are familiar with. And I would love to see Midway represented there, and because that is a cross-county, cross-district, cross-the-state operation, and they will be talking about legislative advocacy and, exactly speaking to everything that you just brought up. So that's one opportunity we have coming up, and we'll get more information about that, if that helps.
Well, one of the other things I think relative to Rick's comments and yours, Pam, we're mid-October, so there's some time to be able to coordinate it and do it. But it would be great to actually have not just our board, but other boards, and to the extent we could get everybody to adopt essentially the same set of legislative priorities, so it could be sent off as being, it's in just Midway ISD, it's Waco ISD, it's La Vega ISD, it's Conley, it's Robinson, it's Lorena, and on and on and on. Much more powerful message if we could all get on board with it.
Sure. That's 126 elected school board officials in the county, if there's 18 school districts roughly. I mean, that's, if you look at our biggest employers in McLennan County, our school district, our district and WISD are in the top 10.
Yep.
And then if you take all the rest, if you add them all together, made them one, it would be the single largest employer in McLennan County. I mean, we've got to start using that muscle.
What's the leadership at Region 12? Why aren't they trying to put this stuff together?
Region 12 is in a little bit of a precarious spot. They can help us facilitate certain things, but I will remind you that the executive director for Region 12 works for Mike Morath.
Yeah, there's a state, it's a state agency, so they can't campaign on a state issue, on a
they can only go so far.
legislative issue.
Should I speak about what I just said in front of you too for just a second, Chris?
I wouldn't see why not.
Back last 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, the convention.
We all attended TechSed convention through TASB, and I was our elected delegate, and this is a legislative priority that represents school board trustees all over the state that got together as, grassroots locally, and then we approved a legislative priority. I think it was 55 resolutions, so there is that representation across the state, but it's this thick. It's not a one sheet. So there's that collective voice of 7,000 trustees.
But I think the point is better made, because I think that, rightly or wrongly, TASB's gotten labeled.
Yeah,
right?
and that's
well, and I think that it's more powerful if it's something that the local districts can come together on, and it's much shorter and simpler and focused,
I
right?
think we need a both and I totally
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. And yes, TASB, yay, that's what is happening there and has happened. I think that there's benefit in that. The other thing, because I was also going to, relative to the sheet here, not to pick at it, but the opposing school vouchers piece of it, to me, one of the things that I hear over and over and over again from so many people is about, oh, well, you know, we got, whether you call them vouchers or whether you call them ESAs, doesn't matter what you call them, it's that competition is good. Competition is good. And it's kind of like, well, wait a minute. How is it that public schools compete with private schools? It's like playing a football game against a team that they've got to go 10 yards for a first down. We got to go 15. They get 4 downs to try to get a first down. We only get 3 downs. They get 6 points for a touchdown. We only get 4.
It's like a
Nobody's
Canadian.
even watching how far they go.
What if we said it this way? They get $14,000 a student to do it, and we get $6,000, and they get none of the regulation, and we get all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, it's just so false to say, oh, competition is a good thing. Yeah, it is, but when you say it, saying that it's good for public schools to have competition, we can't compete with private schools.
Well, and we live in a county with 18 school districts. We've got competition.
Yes.
We've got school choice. We've got a ton of options.
But like the point there said, public schools serve all students. Yes, but the next part's not there. And private schools don't have to and don't.
Select.
They get to pick and choose who they take in, and they can kick them out in a heartbeat.
I wonder, could we add to this priority in front of us, that we get funding based on enrollment and not attendance?
Yeah,
That's on
We
here.
have to equip and accept every child that's eligible to come to our school, not necessarily everyone that shows up.
Yeah.
We still have to
Yeah.
have the space, the teachers.
It's the
there.
second bullet point
It's on
under
there.
fully fund. It just isn't super highlighted. So if you see fully fund Texas Public
Oh,
Schools, increase basic allotment, fully fund, and,
I
I mean,
get a
fund
little
schools.
caught up in
Yeah,
that.
that's a lot of words.
So Pete, I often think about it. I am not anti-private school. I mean, there've been
No,
times
no,
where
that's
that's been the right option for my
For sure.
kids
For sure.
for different times in their life. I'm a little scared for them that they're gonna find out what it means to take public money. They may talk about today, it's not gonna happen. They're just one, judicial decision away from having to live by accountability they don't want.
Well, and I think that's the point, Rick, and I'm like you, I'm not anti-private schools. I have no issue there. I just think, though, if they're going to take tax dollars, then they ought to have to play by the same set of rules we have to play
I
by.
totally agree.
That's the
But they
point.
think they're getting off scot-free, because that's what the legislature's telling them right now. If
Yeah.
they're gonna get the money without the accountability, it's hard to imagine that doesn't get tested and changed
At some point.
at some
Well,
point.
to the point of crushing state funding with administrative costs, one of the things that I sat through that House Subcommittee on Public Education was basically a 2-hour infomercial from representatives from other states that have voucher programs. And some of the taxpayer dollars that were going into these programs was, I gotta get my kid to private school, there's no busing, so I get to use your tax dollars to get my child to private school by Uber. I said, so who's gonna oversee and make sure that the Uber drivers are not registered sex offenders and that my child is safe? And I mean, I don't know, that just kind of made my head spin.
Just
That my tax dollars are paying the Uber driver so you can get your child to private school. I don't know if anyone else sees that as equally.
Plus, just for a lot of
hard, but
people
it just-
to make money off of that.
Well, and, I think from my standpoint, I'm a fan of, if we want to think outside the box to try to find better solutions for education, whatever that looks like. If private schools want to think outside the box, or public schools, or those of us here, I'm for that. I haven't seen anything that's been proposed in the last several years as vouchers or ESA that even looks like it would work. Like in terms of how does a school district plan for growth and bond funds and building a building, or shutting a building down, or hiring staff,
Thank you.
not knowing if their enrollment's going to be up or down 500 or 1,000 year in and year out. So I think there's a whole lot of not there yet for me. And so even if I were to say, hey, let's think outside the box, I think we're nowhere close to workable yet. So I think for me, it's easy to say, hey, nothing that's been proposed so far is even close to working. Let's get back to figuring out, how do we fix the public schools we have? And funding is number one. And honestly, number two is we need to get back to local control over as many issues as we can. I mean, let's stop the unfunded mandates and the strings on things, and let's advocate for let local boards do their work. And if the people that live there don't like it, there's an election.
Right.
Well, and to that point, Colin, I would just say, and this is not a criticism at all of staff of Midway ISD or any school district. We don't exist without good staff, right? I mean, we just don't. But the reality is, when you look at the vast majority of how our M&O money is spent, it's to pay for people.
Yeah.
So when you start talking about what do you really do to move the needle at any school district, right? It's about having more money to have more people and to attract the best people you can attract. And back to Becky's presentation, I was sitting there thinking to myself, man, because my wife's a retired teacher, and she was an outstanding teacher, but what was required of a teacher back when she taught was so different than what we expect from teachers now. I can't even imagine what it would be like to be trying to teach a 5th grade math class with 25 to 30 students in it and trying to individualize what I'm doing based on these, but that's what we're asking these folks to do. That's a tall ask, man.
No, demanding, yeah, I can't.
So, and back to Rick's point about put a number on it. I mean, honestly, I think it's pretty simple for how you go about this. And so literally, as we've been sitting here, I went and registered the domain texas7500.com. If we think 7,500 is a good number, we build a website and we get everyone to sign on to our legislative priorities that are at texas7500.com, and we put that everywhere. And we tell the legislators, this is the number that you start with, and all the other things that go along with it. That's how you do it. So if that's not the number, somebody go register a domain that is, but this is, I literally did it in the last 5 minutes, so.
That's pretty close to the
I'll
number.
give it to whoever wants to manage it.
Well, balances between 7125 and 77, depending on
The back of
what
this
you're
sheet
doing.
says
Listen, if they would
75,700.
get us to 7,500, I'm a happy camper.
Hey, pick
But
a
I think
number.
we need numbers on, like
Yeah.
I said, we
Okay.
need more specifics on this. I know it's in little
So if that's
writing
not
in
the number,
back.
I'll give it to Emily and she can manage whatever it needs to be.
We have numbers.
I know, I'm just saying.
Well, did I not attach the Equity Center PowerPoint
Yeah,
to
you
y'all?
did.
Yeah, you did.
There's,
Yeah.
yeah,
That
okay.
7570 came from the equity
Yeah.
that's on the back.
Okay.
It's
And-
based on the,
CPI.
yeah, the CPI.
And I've done that too, and I got something.
To
similar.
2019 or to 2025?
To 20, from
To 24.
2019 to 24.
To 24, okay, so
Yeah.
that's about right.
So 25's number would need to be 7572.
Yeah.
Another thing we might want to add on here, I think if the legislature had their way, they would make it illegal for us to put stuff like this out.
There you go.
They're gonna go after Tassa and Tasman in this next session.
Yeah.
So, I know a lot of it's with funding lobbyists, but, what are they gonna, where's that gonna end?
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Well, for the
If
record,
we
Colin
do
Witt spent
something like that,
$14
we
on the
can
domain,
expect
not
it
the
to
district.
happen.
Okay. I'm just going to get that out there. That was,
I'm
that was,
sorry, I missed
okay.
that.
So Colin Witt paid for the
I
domain,
paid
not
$14 for the
district.
domain. The district did not, so I just want to get that out there.
All right.
All right, that's good.
So.
Well, were we going to talk about responding to the local misinformation that's been out there? Were we going to talk about that?
I'm open
That's
to, it's
kind of
not an action item for the board on
No, but
tonight's
it's in our
agenda.
advocacy.
Well, and
But
it's a little
Yeah.
apples and oranges. I
We
mean,
need
I looked on the TPPF website to see how they got to that number, and they're basically taking all education spending in the entire state and dividing it by the number of students, not looking at a district budget.
Well, but let me just, and I'm gonna dip into this and get out in a hurry. One of the flaws in the math, though, is they included that all school debt,
Yeah.
all bonded debt.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The problem with that is, like, I get it. One might make the argument you should include the cost of buildings in that, but the problem with bonded debt is if it costs $300 million to build a high school, and so it's like 400. And you divide that by 2,600 kids, that's bad math because that building will serve students for the next 20 or 30
40
years.
right.
So you have to take that number times years, then, and they don't do that. They're not taking the debt and understanding that debt needs to be multiplied times the number of students in the state of children.
My
state of
accountant
Texas.
makes me appreciate my assets. So
It's creative accounting is what it is.
Well,
Creative
it's
accounting.
it's framing an argument.
Well, and in fairness to Mr. Curry, whether he deserves it or not, he did, when pressed, recognize that number, 16,700, includes that. And if you take that out, it drops it to the paltry sum of 12,000 and some change.
Yeah. They also include all the TRS contributions. Like, they're including a lot of money, which I'm just, it's,
When you do the math at 12,000, you know it still doesn't work.
No,
It's
sir.
still
No.
ridiculous.
Those dollars are not going to benefit each child.
Yeah, so, back to the question, what, if anything, how do we respond, how do individuals respond, what do you, I mean, my knee-jerk reaction to write a letter to the editor, it's kind of like, I'm not sure anybody besides me still reads the paper in Waco, so.
Well, that's not going to get you published right there.
Well,
Say that out loud.
You know, so.
No, but that is one thing. I mean, we could have an op-ed that we all sign off on.
I think that's an
That'd be very
outstanding
hard to
idea.
ignore. Okay.
I appreciate you volunteering to write it, Rick.
Well, we have great writers.
Yeah, but we need to do that not on the district's dime.
Okay.
I think that's a good reason.
Now, I mean, if somebody wants to read it
If you
for
need any-
editorial content,
If you need help with us on numbers or any other facts, we'd be glad to supply those.
I mean, op-eds are good, but you guys are talking about Pat Curry's interview in the Trib. I don't pay the Trib, so I can't read that. So if we build a website, we get on social media, we're getting directly to people. We're not being filtered by media anywhere.
We can put it anywhere we
So
want.
I think we need to
Yeah,
do all of
yeah.
the above, yeah. I mean, I think whatever
well, I mean,
it is.
if we've got a really good op-ed piece that we send in and see if the Trib will publish it, that, as Rick said, I mean, we put it out anywhere and everywhere we can get it
everywhere,
out.
Yeah.
All right.
Tag Mr. Curry or other noted folks and make sure they see it as well.
Yeah. All right,
Cleansing breath in.
other superintendent's communications?
I'm going to go quickly.
All right.
You okay?
I'm good.
So y'all, we get super, super excited about what happens on Friday nights around here. And I love a good football game. It brings out cheer, dance, band, all of them. I want to make sure that you know that on Saturday, October 19th at 6:15 p.m., that our band will be competing in the UIL qualifying contest at Panther Stadium, right up here up the road, and that's at 6:15
Okay.
And so if you had the opportunity to come out and support our band, I think they'd be appreciative of that. Okay. Also on 10/19, it's Mr. Alford's birthday. If you don't have that marked on your calendars, mark it.
We have a
Happy
special
birthday
band
to you.
presentation for you.
There's a yeah, that's right.
Special.
To
Be
show
at Panther
up
Stadium at
at
6:15.
stadium.
They're gonna make a birthday cake out on
Um,
the field.
I have in front of me a picture that I don't know if I'm allowed to share it yet
Yep.
or not, but it is Carolyn Wynn holding Charlotte Grace.
Oh,
It's her first grandchild, y'all.
that's exciting.
That's why she's not here tonight. I'm gonna try not to get touched, but y'all, I'm gonna tell you something. We do all this talking about advocacy for public schools. I don't know where Charlotte Grace is gonna go when she grows up. She's gonna go to public school, if she's gonna go to private. I don't know how much longer I'll be around and whether or not I'll be able to see that. But we owe it to her. I mean, we owe it to her to do our best. I don't care what those knuckleheads in Austin are talking about. We owe it to her and everything she's ever going to become to try and help people understand that this calculated campaign to destroy one of the strongest institutions holding up the democracy, it's got to stop.
What's made America great is our public education system.
We're killing people and no one's paying attention. So that happened. And then the last thing I'm going to say is this. Real quick, I'm going to get off this in a hurry. One of the things that we tell young people in athletics all the time is that character wins, but it doesn't show up in a box score and it doesn't make a very fancy TikTok.
Right.
But if you watched our football game last Friday night, you might be aware of the fact that we beat our opponent 33-36. They scored 2 touchdowns that had to come off the scoreboard. One of them because of what they call an illegal blindside block. And if you saw the play, you would recognize it for the fairly cheap act that it was. And y'all, I'm not attacking a kid. It happens in football, okay? But it was cheap and malicious. It wasn't a hustle play that got out of hand. If you watched the play and you saw it, it was just cheap. It was just cheap. They had to pull another touchdown off the scoreboard, our opponent did, because of an interception that got called back because of a late hit out of bounds. We won that game because all 36 points that we scored got to stay on the scoreboard because our kids not only were very physical and very passionate, but they operated with a level of character and self-discipline that our opponent did not match. It's not on a highlight, but it matters. It matters. And I want you to know that in everything else that's going on in the state of public schools these days, we're teaching young people to act right in the face of opposition.
There you go.
We're teaching young people to act right and to take the high road even when those around them aren't. We're making remarkable gains. Most of our kids are great. Most of our parents are wonderful. And we've got things we can point to very specifically that demonstrate that.
There you go.
And we walked out Friday night with a win because of the things that we didn't have to take off the scoreboard. We were able to keep every point because we did it the right way. That and 242 miles from Latham, Wissington. 242 yards, sorry.
Oh,
So,
miles.
yeah, 242 yards. Yeah, eat that. So anyway, that's all I have.
That's a lot of yards.
Anything from anybody else? So we'll have an agenda item for our November meeting on legislative priorities again.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Not under Superintendent's Communications.
Not under
It'll be a
Superintendent's
standalone
Communication,
item.
yes.
Yes, sir.
We can work with that. If nothing else, we are out of the agenda items. Thank everybody for their time and appreciate the board. We're adjourned.
I know, long term I'm wrong. When it looks light, it's always long. Yeah, I agree. I always judge it wrong.
Trying to maintain my girlish figure.
Thank y'all.
Just my boyish figure.
Our youngest son's engagement.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, she's beautiful. She's beautiful. Yep, yep, yep.
I still celebrate, her mother, my future in-laws are public educators.
Yeah.
You know?
What did you say, Carolyn's little girl? What's the girl's name? Charlotte Grayson.
Excellent.
Grace.
In fact, let's see, I think it's Saturday here. I'll have to, I'm going to talk to Packer and so shoot me an email if you want.
I thought the deal that conducted the interview with Mr. Curry, I don't, it didn't have to attribute it to anybody, but I thought they did a great job of questions.
All right.
Oh, we're gonna make a trivia reporter here.
He's here the whole night.
That's cute. We were talking about that.
Yep.